Sometimes when we make a mistake, it just seems a complete waste of time and effort, and we just want to forget about it as soon as possible. But there is a more positive view we can take, and we're often encouraged to do this, and that is to regard the mistake as an experience that didn't work out as we planned, but we could learn from. And in fact, this has survival implications. If you think about our ancient ancestors, for example, and they're out hunting for their next meal in the forest, and they're then ambushed by a dangerous animal, they will want to reflect on that and learn from it, because if it was to happen again, it could be fatal. So the learning often takes the form of asking the question, what can I do differently? Or what can I do better next time? And just recently, an experience occurred to me which was an illustration of exactly that. So I'll tell you the story, and then we can unpick what we can learn from it more generally. So I had been away from home for 10 days working away, and when I got home I wasn't surprised, bearing in mind it's May in the UK as I'm recording this, that I wasn't surprised that the grass in my garden had grown an awful lot in my absence, and therefore the part of it that I keep as a lawn I needed to cut. So the next day turned out to be a beautiful start to the day, and by midday the dew had evaporated from the grass. It was all ready to cut, so I got the mower out, started it, and managed to cut the first third or so before the mower stopped working. I then started investigating and realised that a particular drive belt inside the mower had broken, and I needed a new one. Well, I couldn't actually get one until the next day, and I needed to find somewhere that had one in stock, and that meant a 50-mile round trip to go and get it. So on that day I spent the afternoon replacing this belt, and to do that I found I had to take pretty much half the mower to pieces to get at where I needed to go. So by the evening I'd put it all back together again, and the evening was still fine, so I was hoping to finish the grass cutting at that point. But when I tried to start the mower, it wouldn't work. And by then my patience had just run out, and I was frustrated, I was angry. I'd spent all day trying to sort it out, and it still wasn't working. So I just put it back and left it, and tried to forget about it. Interestingly, the next morning I was able to quite quickly see what the problem was. It was a little valve that I had shut while I was working on the mower, and I hadn't opened it again. So with that illustration, if I then ask myself the question, what could I do better next time? What could I do differently next time? In other words, what's the learning here? It comes down to several things. First of all, I'm more familiar with the situation of repairing this particular mower, because it was the first time I'd ever done that. So if I was to do it again, I've got that knowledge and understanding of how things go together, which will help me. I also know a bit more about the order in which to do things, which would make life easier, so I could avoid doing unnecessary things and just focus on what was essential. So there was definitely learning at the level of doing, or level of skill, how you undertake the task, and also what tools were best to do particular operations as well. And that was all valuable. I mean, that level of learning from our experiences is often very helpful. And yet there is another level that's become clear to me that we can also learn from, and in fact learn a great deal from. So if we call that level we've just been considering level 1, the level of what can I do differently, what can I do better, the second level, level 2, we could call what or how could I be differently? How could I approach this from a mental point of view, from a state of mind point of view? And if I look back on the issue of repairing the mower, I can see, and as I've described to you, as the day went on, I was getting more impatient and frustrated, and that meant that my perspective began to narrow. I began to become very, almost as if I had tunnel vision, very narrow focus. And that actually, looking back now, was the reason I didn't spot the valve that was shut when it should have been open. And when my mind had cleared overnight, then I saw that pretty much straight away. It was almost obvious what the problem was. So this level 2 learning is about reflecting on your state of mind, not just what you were doing, but the state of being you were in when you were doing it. And you can learn a lot from that. I can learn a lot from that. And I can see that if I feel that sense of impatience and that sense of frustration, it's a signal that my mind isn't actually operating at an optimum. It's not actually doing its best, and therefore it's going to impact the doing, what I'm actually trying to achieve in terms of tangible outcome. So I might decide, for example, that next time I would take a break now and again, so that I had a chance to step back from the detail and let my perspective widen again, so I'm less likely to miss things. And also the fact that it would be more enjoyable, or at least not so intense and stressful, if I had some breaks in the process of doing the doing. So there's a learning there that we can always take when we reflect on our state of mind while we are actually doing whatever it is we're doing. And in fact, just to finish with, it reminds me of the story that Stephen Covey writes about in his well-known book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You may have come across this story. He calls the habit sharpen the saw, because he illustrates it with a story of a traveller who is in the woods, and he comes across a worker cutting a tree down. And he can see that this man cutting the tree down is working very hard. He's red in the face, and he's perspiration on his forehead, and he's sort of pulling and pushing the saw. And the traveller, perhaps rather bravely, says to the worker, "Why don't you stop for a minute and sharpen the saw?" And the worker says, "Oh, I haven't got time for that." And that's pretty much exactly where I was with my mower. I didn't want to take a break because I wanted to get it finished, and yet the fact I was pressing on with a state of mind that was clearly telling me I wasn't actually functioning at my optimum was actually trying to like trying to cut a tree down with a blunt saw. So that's how you can get more learning from your mistakes, and look at it as level 1, what could you do differently, but also consider and reflect on the level 2, which is how was your state of mind, what were you feeling, which is the guide to your state of mind. Feelings like impatience and frustration are good indicators that you're not actually working at best optimum function. So I'll leave you to reflect on that yourself, and as I often say in these videos, if you have any questions and comments, please let me know, and I'll see you next time.